Hello, everyone. My name is Anna, and I'd like to welcome you to today's Gains IQ webinar. During the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. The audio for today's presentation is being broadcast over your computer speakers. If you experience trouble with the audio broadcast, you may dial in via the audio conference phone line instead. To do this, select More Options at the bottom of your screen under the three-dot icon. Select Switch Audio, select Call-in option, then follow the dial-in instructions that appear on your screen. If you experience any problems with the WebEx portion of the event, please send me a message in the Q&A window. I'm listed as the host for today's call. You can also contact WebEx technical support directly at 866-779-3239. There will be a live Q&A session following today's presentation. Questions can be submitted at any time online by clicking on the Q&A tab located on the right-hand side of your screen. Please be sure to address your questions to all panelists. If your question is not answered live, we will follow up with you after the event. As a reminder, this presentation is being recorded. A copy of the presentation and the webinar recording will be sent to all attendees in a few days. I will now turn it over to our presenter, Jeff Matursky. Jeff, take it away.
Great, thanks, Anna. Welcome, everybody. This is one of my favorite things to do, is get to talk to customers about kind of new and exciting capabilities, and especially to be able to talk about design is something that's near and dear to my heart. For those of you that do not know me, again, my name is Jeff Matursky. I'm the VP of Solution Strategy here at Gains. I joined a little bit over 10 months ago to kind of take on the responsibility of driving the overall products and solution strategy of the company. And as you're going to hear about with this recent acquisition that we've made into the supply chain design space, I am also heading up that efforts inside of our company. So back in about the March-April main time frame, we made an acquisition. The company is called Tenets Optimization. It's a group of about a dozen folks that are spread out throughout the United States. The bulk of them are located in Atlanta with some offshore development resources to really expand our footprint of the types of business decisions that we can help you all with. And so you've been, accustomed to where we have focused kind of throughout our lifetime in the supply chain planning world. And those are most of the items that are here, kind of on this pinwheel, starting at demand planning and forecasting and wrapping themselves all around in through S&OP. With the addition of the experts and the technology from 3TO, we are now offering and expanding what was an initial start in design probably about a year ago, but really now a real fulsome solution to commercial grades technology and people to deliver supply chain design, and as a subset of that will be transportation strategy. And so as I go through the presentation here this afternoon, hopefully it'll become clear what supply chain design is all about. I'm hoping that it would really resonate with you all, as these are the types of decisions that you are currently making inside of your organization and are looking for ways to enhance your capability to make those decisions, to make them faster, to make them potentially with higher degrees of accuracy, and to bring back higher degrees of value to you as you're making those decisions. So let's talk a little bit about some of the following capabilities. We try to frame up a little bit around what design is all about. Start asking questions that will appear to be more in the strategic, tactical kind of horizons, right? If you ask yourself the questions of, if I look at my supply chain from its physical capabilities, from the policies that drive it, from the organizational people that are inside of it, do I have the ability to look at my current and future business strategies and see how my supply chain will align and deliver on things like shareholder value, market share? What do I do when I'm entering and departing into new markets? How do I look at entering and bringing out new product lines? If I want to change what my current business objectives might be, am I trying to maximize market share? Am I competing on price? Am I competing on service? And what happens to me as I go through acquisitions or mergers of individual businesses and or divestitures? If I think about it from a meeting improvement goals, do I understand what my supply chain's capabilities are in a variety of key metrics associated with reductions in costs, working capital, increasing revenue, increasing return on invested capital. I think about service level metrics of order fulfillment lead times. What are my initiatives and what am I doing to improve sustainability? And then, some of the biggest ones that have existed over the last several years as a result of the pandemic is what am I doing to improve the resiliency and agility of my supply chain while at the same time trying to reduce my operational risk. And all of this actually happens in an environment of, constant rapid pace of change. And change inside of our supply chains can come from a variety of different areas, from technology adoption, changing customer requirements, new business models that are existing, either that we're trying to adopt or our competitors are putting in place, changes in the global trade environment with restrictions and policies and import and export regulations, how we're incorporating in social responsibility, competitive pressures, and on and on and on. The supply chain is a living, breathing entity that is constantly under evaluation of understanding as my internal environment is changing and my external environment is changing. Do I actually have the proper supply chain to meet my business objectives and goals? And then finally, we'd ask the overall question of, are we operating at the peak efficiency and effectiveness that we can? So if we're looking at how we're making strategic and policy-based decisions that are going to drive planning and execution, and we'll touch on that in a minute. Are we doing that in a framework where we're trading off service versus financial implications versus risk? Do we actually understand in our current supply chain today where performance is being constrained and why? And do I actually have visibility to that current performance with a root cause so that I can actually have a feedback mechanism to come through and make changes to my physical design that will then govern and inform how I can actually plan and then ultimately how I can execute? So planning and execution are not enough. So let me tee up why that's the case. When we think about, the three disciplines that exist inside of supply chain, the first two are going to be very common to you all. It's going to be, the first one is execution, right? So taking action to meet actual demand within the service and cost constraints imposed by the existing supply chain. This is what you do day in and day out, every day to fulfill your customers' orders, right? To actually move goods between locations, to actually do production. And there's a variety of different technology solution areas that are there, from order management to warehouse management to global trade management. This area of execution is not really where Gaines plays, right? That's not what you are our customers for. What you are our customers for is planning, right? And so planning is trying to determine what actions need to be taken, anticipating demand, right? But it's all imposed within inside of the current network structure. So these are my locations, this is my capacity, these are the modes of transportation that I use. And inside of all of that, I'm doing the best that I can to actually plan my execution. So these are the traditional ones that many of you use Gaines for, from demand planning, inventory planning, production planning, and scheduling. Not so much transportation planning from us, but from other companies have that, and integrated business planning. But what ties this all together is you have an existing supply chain that is today. What we want to be thinking about is, what is the future design that I want to have? I don't want to just be constrained by the way that I operate today. I don't want to necessarily be constrained by the way that I assign customers to distribution centers and leave that static. I don't necessarily want to leave the modes of transportation and the flow paths that I have that are going through suppliers, through ports of entry, kind of landing at my manufacturing or distribution centers. How do I actually determine the future physical infrastructure, the capacities that are required inside of that infrastructure, what the capabilities are, what do I want to be able to do at each one of my stocking locations? Am I doing light kitting? Am I doing assembly? Am I doing testing? Is it a returns location? Where am I going to be manufacturing my work in process versus my finished goods? And then a variety of different policies that actually govern those operations day in and day out, right? What products do I make where? How many shifts of capacity will I actually run? what customers should be served out of which locations? Should I actually, when I order, make sure that I'm ordering in full container or full truckload quantities, or should I just order to the inventory level I need? These are all policies that I don't decide on the fly day in and day out, but once I put those policies in place, whether I've done that intentionally, right, through design types of activities, or they've evolved over time, those physical infrastructure and policy policy items govern how well I can do in planning, and then ultimately how well I can do in execution. And so when we kind of think about the three different areas of, design being what supply chain should I have, planning being how can I best operate the existing supply chain, and execution, it's not uncommon to think about these in the dimension of strategic, tactical, and operational. There's different places where we can actually draw these lines on what is really considered strategic or tactical. It varies by industry. It could vary by geography. It could vary by customer. But in general, when we think about execution, we're really in that hours to week time frame when we're in planning, the planning that we're talking about here. So not strategic planning, right, but more of the tactical operational planning. And then we've got design. And what you'll find is the governance here is that the higher up that I am in my ability to design my supply chain, right, the more choices I have, the more I can influence the financial service performance, the more I can actually help mitigate risks by building in redundancy, by building in secondary and primary suppliers. I design all that. I can't do that every single day and make that choice on the fly. I've got to put that capability in place. And so as I move from design, where I have a lot of freedom, the biggest impact and fewest constraints, all the way down to constraints, being constrained, right, at the operational level, what we've seen over all these years of doing this, and this is a stat that came out probably at this point over 25 years ago, but it still rings true today. This is from today, you may know them as Gartner. Back in the days, they used to be called AMR. But 80% of the supply chain's cost is actually locked in at the start. And this really needs to be updated as we move forward, because a lot of what's been focused on in the supply chain design world for the last 30 plus years that I've been doing this has been very, very cost centric. And costs in a lot of ways have made our supply chains very fragile. They've made them brittle. We saw what happened, during the pandemic. And so now there's really more of a balancing that's happening, that it's not just all about cost. It's also learning to understand our resiliency, our responsiveness, right? How do I actually design a supply chain to balance off my risk versus my financial performance? And so when we think about, planning and execution, the one thing that I'll say when we're in these kind of conversations is the best planning and execution just can't overcome a bad design, right? There's only so much that I can do through each one of these pictures, to actually perform and execute. So whatever were the objectives of these individual designs, it might have been maximizing wall space. It might have been proximity of handles, together. It might have been trying to push as many different things in one device as possible. But the usability of these items is really not there. And so we've got to make sure when we're doing design that we're thinking about the operational feasibility of that design. And that's one of the benefits that we believe we have by being in the planning domain as well as being in the design domain, that we're always focused on operational feasibility and realities of, can I execute the designs that are being created? Can I actually plan against them? When I plan against a potential design, can I literally see how I'm going to perform before I actually put that design in place? And so running today's supply chains means continuously making decisions and answering lots of questions. We are here as Gaines to continue to focus on supporting you all in broadening the number of questions and decision points that we can help you with. And so while we continue to stay focused on planning and enhancing everything in the core planning functions that we deliver to you all, we're going to keep on expanding in the supply chain domain to allow you to answer additional questions, things that you don't get traditionally out of planning solutions and not out of the Gaines planning solutions today, right? So when I think about network structure, when I think about, do I need to put in redundant suppliers, If I think about what are my pre-build strategies because of my seasonality and capacity balancing, when I think about where are there places in the network for me to actually consolidate when I'm doing pickups from suppliers or multi-stop deliveries out to customers. If I'm trying to understand, should I change my stocking strategy, right? So what SKUs should I stock at what location in the network? Should I have a multi-echelon type of network? If I think about product flows and I'm doing significant amount of importing, right? Where in the country should I actually, what ports of entry should I use to land that? And once I've landed it at that port, what do I now do then? Right? Do I use land bridge? Do I actually do break bulk operations and activities? So if you think about the physical flows of your supply chain and the logic and decisions surrounding them, these are the sets of questions that we want to open up the world for you all to be able to leverage our technology and our services and our capability to answer those questions either with you, right? So we can look at this as service-based offerings that we can help you on one-off types of studies and analyses, all the way to actually you procuring the software. We're helping to train your teams or teams that already know how to use this type of technology, and you're kind of building up your own internal competencies to do this. But the focus is, right, we are supporting now more of the decisions that are driving that planning decision, right? We're driving more of the decisions that help to influence and control your cost that you're delivering out as you run your operations, right? We're right-sizing the capacity that's required, whether that be storage capacity, receiving capacities, production capacities. So anywhere inside the network, what are the benefits that are associated with increasing my capacity of making strategic investments inside of the supply chain? So hopefully that's helping to give you a little bit of a flavor, right? We kind of just want to make this as a primer to understand what design is about. But I thought what I would do is take you through kind of one example to maybe drive home, what goes into potentially one simple question that you may come to. And that one simple question, and I ask you to, as I'm going through this, think how in your organizations today you would actually answer this question. Right. So your chief supply chain officer has now come to you from marketing intelligence and information, and it is now known that your competitor now offers same-day service. New in the market, they're the only ones that are out there that are doing it, and you have to make a decision of, if I want to also match them with same-day service, how would I do that? And what would the cost implications be in order to do that? And so as I start working my way through the questions that need to be decided in terms of where and for which product should we provide next day service, does it make sense to do that across our entire portfolio? Does it make sense to do that against all of the geographies where we service our customers, or would it be some subset? And if we're going to provide next day service, does that do anything to change the type of distribution facilities we have? Does it change what their location should be? In order to be economical, I may need to move. Today, I may be a single branch type of network where I have locations all across the country, and I don't have enough reach to do same day service. Do I want to really add more branches, or possibly, do I want to? I'm just going to jump ahead, but do I want to change my transportation? If I go to same day service and I'm now filling my customers' orders with a greater level of frequency, do I want to change my service level strategy? Do I still want to provide the same 95, 99% same day, or do I want to dip that down? And if I do so, what is the inventory that's going to be required to support that, right? If I have my own fleet, or I have a dedicated fleet, right, associated with me, what is now the sizing of those assets? How many trucks do I need at each location in order to meet this next day service level? Excuse me. Does any of my product sourcing strategies need to change? Right. So do I think about where I'm providing my product from? Do I have to replenish my distribution centers with a greater level of speed? Do I now, because I'm going to replenish more frequently or deliver more frequently out to my customers, do I want to change my strategies of where I'm actually doing my sourcing? I may not want to on any of these. Do I need to change the modes of transportation that I use inside the network? And then at the end of the day, when I answer all these questions, I need to understand, well, what's it going to cost me to do this? And if it's going to cost me more than today, am I willing to take a hit to my margins and erode some of my margins in order to stay competitive from a market share perspective? Or is there room to actually increase the pricing? So what would happen if I increase the pricing for this same day service, but leave the pricing differently from my other service options? And then the last thing that we would say is that, when I look at this then new network design, right, that's associated with offering same day service, how robust is this network? How resilient is it? If I lose pieces of my operation due to a variety of different disruptions, right? If I have locations that are shut down, if I have distribution fires, if I have a carrier that's going out of business, how nimble and responsive am I to get back to that steady state where I'm still providing that same day service inside the network? And as you think about all of these things independently, and this is just an example of a simple question, I can't make those decisions in isolation, right? They all play off of each other. And we need to have that environment where we're actually providing a modeling framework that allows us to understand these trade-offs and test these alternatives and test these scenarios to understand the trade-offs that exist between all those questions that are there. With the end of the day being that lens, that financial performance, right, service level performance, and then ultimately what the risk appetite is of your organization are all being traded off against each other in a common framework. So when we think about the supply chain design technologies that brought to bear, right, when we think about what types of tools we bring to answer these types of questions, right, Gaines has already been really well positioned to offer two of them, right? So we already do demand forecasting and modeling, right? So it's crucially to understand as we're moving forward in time, what do we believe is the projected demand that our supply chains need to be able to operate against. And as many of you are using and familiar with, we already have inventory optimization and planning capabilities to understand the right inventory to hold, right, to understand the replenishment policies, the frequencies, the MOQs. So that's already in our wheelhouse, but it becomes part of focusing on using those in a design mode, not just in a planning mode. But what we bring to the table is two additional technologies that come from our acquisition at 3TO. So one of them being network optimization, and the underlying kind of algorithms there are what's known as mixed integer linear programming. So it's a true math optimization approach that actually helps with all of the structural types of decisions. It helps with physical infrastructure, as well as helping to understand optimal policies around flow, all with an eye on usually it's being used to minimize cost or to maximize profit against varying levels of service. The other capability as an engine, if you want to think about it that way, is a transportation optimization and modeling. And this is where we're getting into more of the granularity of individual, shipment by shipment, order by order movements and routing, looking at various modes of transportation, looking at building shipments, looking at fleet sizing, right? Looking at types of different assets that are associated with it, and trying to understand routes, whether that be multi-pickup, multi-stop, or ultimately kind of interleaving those together. The fifth part of the equation is something that is a TBD. It will become part of it. We'll have a much better story, or I shouldn't say story. We'll have a much better thing to share with you in terms of exactly where we are. But this is on simulation. So this is being able to actually take any one of these designs, right, any one of these policies, and bring it through a discrete event simulation environment that allows us to now meticulously model, if I were to execute this network with this set of planning recommendations, what would the performance of my network actually be in terms of order completeness, in terms of fill rates, in terms of actual costs? But the big part of this is it allows me to do this with variability considerations. So many of these other techniques have deterministic factors to them. And so they have one set of inputs. You do an analysis, you get an output, you vary the input, and you try to go through a variety of different scenarios. Simulation allows me to understand, given a network structure, if I'm going to have variability in my lead times, variability in my manufacturing schedule adherence, variability in demand, carrier performance, right? If that's the case, how would that network literally perform day in and day out, order by order? So it's a really exciting component to bring this all together. Stay tuned for, we're going to be having more and more announcements that are going to be coming of our direction in this area, along with some things that are not on the slide right now. But by the time we actually get to Summit, and in a minute, Anna's going to talk about what are all the sessions at Summit, we're going to have a much richer, robust conversation around this is just the beginning of where we are in design. And to a large part, this is kind of traditional. Lots of other companies have done this, but we have plans and roadmaps and visions of what we're going to be doing to really change the game on how design is actually done. And it should be an exciting journey that hopefully some of you will be willing to sign up and take with us. So if I tie it all back together at the end here, right, what I'm hoping that you've realized is, there's a real reason why Gaines decided that we wanted to move into the supply chain design world, right? There is a need that we know exists in your businesses, right? We know that you are continuously being challenged with ever increasing variability, uncertainty, complexity, disruptions, right? Customer requirements and competition and regulations. Like, the world continues to change on you, and in certain industries and certain geographies, it's changing more rapidly than others, but it always goes in cycles. And your supply chain just can't stay static. It needs to be evaluated on an ongoing basis to understand, what do I need to do to change that infrastructure, to change those capabilities, to change the capacity, to change the policy so that I can be resilient, responsive, agile and flexible, but all while making sure I have the overall umbrella of it is economical and feasibly sound. So we believe that this integration of bringing together the practical realities that we understand very well of planning complement design to make design executable, to make design operationally feasible. It doesn't do me any good to do strategic studies and ask a lot of what if questions, and they get challenged by the fact that I've made so many simplifying assumptions and I've aggregated things so much that I just can't see how this thing's going to run in the real world, right? We understand how things run in the real world because we live and breathe that with you on a daily basis in the planning domain. And so it allows us to inform design to be a more meaningful exercise when you go through it. And at the end of the day, it's a joint win-win for us. We believe that this will increase the value to you that we offer as a company. It'll allow us to elevate relationships with you because a lot of these questions move beyond kind of the planning organization and get into the executive decision level board conversations. And I'd be remiss to say that we also think that this is just a great opportunity for us, to continue to be around for you, to do what we've been doing for so many years. This is another revenue stream into us as well, right? That continues to allow us to reinvest, right? And be around to continue to offer more and more solutions to help you with your decisions. So with that, Anna, I'm going to turn it back to you if you want to talk about what is going on at Summit this fall.
Yeah, so we're coming up on our 2023 Game Summit in Chicago, October 11th through 12th. And as you can see from this agenda image, we have a lot of design-focused sessions on both day 1 and day 2. And I will be sharing this presentation with you when you receive your recording. So don't worry about consuming all of this information right this moment, but we're really excited for this year for the design focused sessions, which are new this year, obviously. And some things to note here are that early bird pricing ends July 31st, so register now to receive a discounted price. We have nearly 50% new customers joining this year, so even if you've attended in years past, the content and the people will be different. A chance to network with new faces and encourage other people within your organization to join us. We're very excited about this event. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me after the webinar today. And I think that pretty much sums it up. We can move to the next poll here. So please take a moment to fill out the poll and let us know if you're interested in hearing more about supply chain design. We will be sure to reach out to you. And I think we can take it to Q&A now. Thanks so much. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jeff.
Yeah, let me see if anything is coming in. Q&A perspective. You know, people are possibly answering the polling part of it as well, so give them a minute. I don't see, if I'm looking at this right, Anna, I don't see any that have come in while I was presenting, unless I'm missing something.
You're correct.
Okay, well, evidently I did too good of a job that there are absolutely no questions whatsoever. But if anybody has anything to that comes up, like I said, this is a serious journey for us. We are really excited to be able to offer this type of capabilities into you as our customers. I know that over the years of doing this, I've done hundreds of these at multiple different places at software industry and consulting, and I'm sure this need is real. I'm sure there's questions that are sitting inside here. We're having access to design technology and design experts could be a benefit to you and your company. So I'm really looking forward, starting from today and definitely, all the way through Summit. To have dialogues with anybody at any time about what your design needs may be. So thank you very much for joining us today. It's been my pleasure to be able to present to you, and I hope the rest of your day is excellent. Thank you so much.